Well, hello, my Bitcoin friends. I just heard on the radio, yes, that device your grandparents used to use, that all Bitcoin spot ETFs will be approved this fall. Let the games begin. So if you're wondering why it took so long to get a spot ETF approved in the US, the answer is quite simple. The folks at the SEC were buying their friends at BlackRock space and time to acquire as much BTC as possible, to buy large stakes in 4 out of the top 5 Bitcoin miners, and to change the public narrative. Larry Fink was not on CNBC and Bloomberg for his health. He was driving consensus around the products that they're about to sell you and making sure that they get out in front of everybody else. That's the game. If you're interested in some of the inside baseball around this Bitcoin spot ETF, take a look at this podcast from Pomp. It's good analysis.
That's pretty crazy that after so many years, finally, there'll be this public-facing normie on-ramp for Bitcoin speculation and hodling. But do you think, Norgard, that it's going to eventually make its way to be a treasury asset to back fiat? And isn't that what has to happen? Because isn't it that, Miele, are you following? I don't know if anyone follows Latin American politics, or there's this guy in Argentina that just won the presidency that he's a real big Bitcoiner. And the only way to true up the Argentine peso is not through another, IMF rescue program, like the number 45, or, defaulting on another round of debt, but it's probably having a reliably scarce reserve asset. That could be gold, but Bitcoin is very attractive for all the reasons that you guys know. Do you think anyone have any thoughts on Bitcoin adoption as a reserve asset and what that does eventually to all fiat having to have some kind of Bitcoin backing, or be completely authoritarian and controlled and shut off from all other currencies with a Bitcoin ban? I guess like China tries to do in India. Excuse me, I misspoke. He has not yet won, Miele, but he could win. And with inflation at 100%, per month in Argentina, 100%. His policies are looking more and more attractive to a lot of people who don't see any other way out. I think there's Bitcoin and then there's everything else in crypto. Bitcoin stands apart, headless, decentralized, distributed, impossible to shut down, censorship resistant, and everything else has a head, a throat to choke, and can be stomped out. So Bitcoin serves as a bridge in and out of fiat regimes in a censorship-resistant way. And the other use case, obviously, is hodling. But all the crypto use cases seem to be wanting because they're not decentralized and they can be shut down. So the minute they threaten the primary use case of money, then the local government will ban it, will shut it down. And that has been tried against Bitcoin, but unsuccessfully. It still thrives. It is very anti-fragile, whereas everything else, all the other crypto projects seem very, very fragile.
Yes, I mean, today Bitcoin is 100% decentralized. I haven't really looked. I'd have to double check. But if you go back to 2017, it wasn't. You could definitely make the argument it's a very centralized system. So you had Bitmain made all the ASICs, and they probably controlled the majority hash power. And that just goes through Gian, the CEO, he was involved in BTC.top and all these big mining pools in China. Most of the hash power was in China. And so if the CCP wanted to, as a totalitarian state, they can just tell these people, hey, we're going to 50% attack this, 51% attack this chain. We're going to do a deep reorg of 1,000 blocks. And then these exchanges are going to lose all their money and no one's going to trust this currency ever again, right? Because if you reorg 1,000 blocks deep and then you have a huge capital shortfall in Coinbase and Binance and all these things, that's an issue. And then of course what they would do is none of these exchanges would accept that. So they would agree on a state of a ledger and then reboot off that state. But then you really, proof of work really isn't working for you then, is it? So it's interesting. It's over a period of time, a project should become more decentralized, right? So when Satoshi first launched Bitcoin, it was not decentralized. 2017, I would make the argument it was not decentralized. Today it probably is. Today it's probably impossible to control, which is fantastic. And I think the same, Ethereum is probably on a similar trajectory. It was very centralized when it was launched. Like now there's so many engineers involved and like teams involved. Almost certainly it's not, even though, Vitalik does of course have influence and he's playing a very, very good, benevolent dictator role. But I think he still has like probably very hard time getting like changes going through and all that. And then over time, like so another 4 years, I would expect Ethereum to be much more decentralized. It's just a thing that occurs over a period of time. The other failure cases for Bitcoin, one, the block subsidy is obviously a problem. They're going to do something to address that at some point. They're going to be forced to. And then the other issue is it's a giant panopticon. Like it's all public information. There is no privacy on it. So like Bitcoin having, global adoption and being used as a unit of trade, I don't think you can do that technically just because I can't make private payments in it. Like if I am a corporation and I have, I'm competing against other people. If I'm a nation state, I have other competitors. If I'm just an individual, I also don't want the world knowing what I'm doing with my money. So I think from that sense, like panopticon money is not that valuable long term. But in the next like 5-10 years, I think it's a fine play. That's an excellent point. The series of insights that led Satoshi into creating Bitcoin, that being you should not have an all, dominating state, be it just an outright totalitarian state like China, or what is happening in the West where you have this all dominating bureaucracy that's almost as bad. Just the court systems kind of hold up better for now. That system is incorrect, and the individual liberty is what matters. Like your right to free speech, what matters. Right to transact is what matters, and these things should be encoded in the new constitution of these decentralized networks. Like that sort of like moral axiom, the sort of moral perspective of that is like basically totally blown out in crypto. I don't think really anyone believes that stuff anymore. And in broad set, there's like a few people individually that like have those views, but it's not, like the crypto community doesn't have those views at all. And that's sort of like disheartening. Like I do like I'm in it for like the moral aspect, and like the money is just a byproduct of that. But these are like primarily like financially driven systems. So like the financial aspect of it and the incentive structure of it should just drive it anyway, which is like Satoshi's point. But it is somewhat disheartening. And like if you have a good narration and you have the correct moral compass and you are making a strong moral argument, you can attract higher quality people. You know what I mean? Like what do you want? Do you want to go out and like just make money and be a money husk and like not really contribute to society, or do you want to go out and you want to build, the new systems of like freedom and liberty, and you want to take the innovation that, this renaissance of knowledge that is now like centered in the United States, and you want to bring that to the whole world, especially like as that system is collapsing. So I think one has a better narration and can be sold to people who will be willing to sacrifice for. And unfortunately, that's basically dead. Like crypto doesn't have that view anymore. It's just all money, which is kind of stale.
Hey, Julius, I tend to agree with you. I think the moral compass around crypto evaporated basically at the beginning of DeFi summer. We haven't seen really anything out of that community other than people trying to acquire more money, more power, more status. But I want to make a clear distinction between crypto and Bitcoin. Having attended Bitcoin meetups across the globe for almost 10 years, as you mentioned, I have met more high-quality people at these events than anywhere else that I've actually spent my time. And one thing I want to focus on is that the Bitcoin community does not see themselves as part of the crypto community. And these are very, very strong lines that are drawn. And I know that everyone here can chuckle about this, but it's a very different world. And what's interesting about the world is it's not purely about sovereignty around money. It's about sovereignty around family, sovereignty around physical health. And it's an entire worldview that I think is very, very powerful of the now and has the ability to potentially propagate memetically around the entire world. And one thing that's interesting about these meetups is I find the quality of the people just as high outside the US in places you wouldn't imagine as I do at a meetup in, say, Austin, Texas. And so I think that this way of living, this mindset is traveling extremely fast, and I wouldn't necessarily put that to bed quite yet.
What a surprise. The folks at the SEC have decided to shuffle their feet another 45 days on the Bitcoin spot ETF announcement so their friend Larry Fink and his cronies at BlackRock can acquire more BTC, can buy positions in miners, and can go on business television and talk about how BlackRock is the safe place for your money with respect to Bitcoin. That's the game.
And Bitcoin doesn't need to be backed by gold. It's the kind of asset, it's the one that will actually do the actual backing in the future because of its properties. Ethereum, the coin, and its block space are precious commodities for use in decentralized finance. The gas paid to secure that block space's monetary utility.
Much like my year-old soft landing call, booyah, I'm going to stick to my Bitcoin and all exposures supposition in that, one, the money allocators aren't back, so you shouldn't expect big price motions right now. It takes a little time. Speaking of time, so
whenever I hear the name BlackRock, I think of that giant black cube in the desert that millions of people swirl around every year.